Hello, and we want to welcome you again to another prophecy training presentation where we look at prophetic events and as they develop and unfold as God's plan goes forward. And today we want to take a little trip inside the food chain and what we would call the redesign, so to speak, of the way food is being grown today. And that's a company called Monsanto. And that company today is, if we look at it, it's recognized as one of the more profitable companies in the United States, especially in the area of developing synthetic food production and altering the current foods that we grow out of the ground and we cut coming off trees and so forth to reproduce it in such a way that we get more production, better value, and more of a direct opposition of what we see happening in God's plan and the way food is meant to be actually created. Monsanto has taken upon itself to redesign the gene, so to speak, in the way food can be produced. Inside of this whole attitude is what we hope to address right now. The health effects, the redesign of the food production process, the effects it has, and the way the people are being misled or being kept completely in the dark on the subject. And this is the best media this speaker has right now to bring this information to you. Thank you again for bearing with us, and we are going to create and are creating a crisis that's already being addressed, and very few can put the link to it. But thanks to the Spirit of the living God and Jesus Christ and His Word, as we understand what's being said, we are in a position to share and let our viewing audience understand the catastrophe that's going to be out in front of us very shortly. And I start off by reading an article here from, this is Monsanto. They were named the Company of the Year. This is done by Forbes magazine, and it goes on to say, St. Louis-based Monsanto has been named the 2009 Company of the Year by Forbes magazine. The publication cites Monsanto's ongoing work in the field of bioengineering to improve crop yields and feed an ever-growing world population. We hear and see in the earlier message of the greatness of Monsanto with bioengineering techniques and some of the things that are being presented before mass media and people and the population at large, that we are doing a good thing. And I call you back to the scriptures that we see will be happening in the last days, and in particular in the book of Isaiah, the 5th chapter, the 20th verse, which states that the people are going to be fooled. Those who are not in darkness, they're being led to a point where they're understanding and what's going on because they trust in our government, they trust in our major corporations that this is all being done for the benefit of the people. Well, unfortunately, greed happens to be a very major part of what most of these corporations are. And this has been a very financially successful corporation. If you had to invest money with the attitude of making profit, Monsanto certainly has displayed that kind of a track record. Now let's examine beyond the profit motive what Monsanto is really doing. And what we're sharing here is going to be probably done in a couple-part series as well because there's so much understanding. But the real crisis here that we're addressing is the process that the corporation had used to develop and bring forward this new redesigned bioengineered food called genetically modified organisms, or GMOs, and the benefits that come from it, and also the side effects that come from it as well, to the point where what we hear from this corporation and the government and other associations that support the design of this food as being one that we need in the century we're in, but it does not talk about the caustic or the fatality that may be brought forward in the society. And the question here, is this happening because of design or because of a population control plan or because of a shortage of food? Don't really have the answers to it, but we're going to present some facts that you will find to be very interesting. And as we go on to read further in this article, it says, Forbes noted that the Monsanto has been able to avoid the brunt of the recession, earning more than $2 billion on revenue of $11.7 billion in fiscal year '09. While sales are increasing at an annualized 18% clip over the last 5 years, they continue to prosper in what they're doing. So on the surface, if you were an observer, you were an investor, you were looking for someplace to put your investing dollars to see them grow, this certainly is a corporation that you would want to consider. But as you take a look beyond the cover of the book and start to look inside the pages and some of the effects and influence that go on with all this, you begin to get a different story. And what we see here, now here's another article just following up on Monsanto. As I say, this, and what we're doing here, it's going to be in probably 2 or 3 parts before we cover it all, but comments here. When testing for drug pesticide safety, the standard protocol is to use 3 mammalian species. The subject's studies only uses rats. Yet, 1 GMO approval in the more than a dozen nations. The researchers conclude that the raw data from all 3 GMO studies reveal novel pesticide residues will be present in the food and feed and may pose grave health risks to those consuming them. Excuse me. Now this, factor number 1. We want to repeat that again. Researchers conclude that the raw data that was used to develop and bring forward GMOs, genetically modified organisms, into the food production process is very incomplete, and they reveal that there are pesticides and other things that may cause grave danger to those consuming genetically modified organisms, or the basic staples in our food process, which is beginning to almost consume the whole food chain. This is a result, and when we talk about genetically modified organisms, we're talking about vegetables and seeds that are used as a one-time. They have no reproduction life inside them. This automatically suggests that there's something metabolically and maybe bioengineered that would raise major questions about introducing such a process. And as we see as we go on with this presentation of information, that the data itself kind of says, how did we get this far? And what are we doing for the future of our people? And one of the cautions and one of the things we see now, we can make an association with this and say, this may be the cause of some of the reduction in our bee population as you begin to hear and understand what's inside the genetically modified seed. What's inside this gene and how it's influencing and affecting our food process and the way we eat. Second, they come out and we talk about, they have called for an immediate ban on the import and cultivation of these GMO and strongly recommended additional long-term, up to 2 years, and multi-generational animal feeding studies on at least 3 species to provide truly scientific, valid data on the acute and chronic toxic effects of GM crops, feed, and food. We're saying as they use and introduce this into the food cycle, it's being put inside the feed, being grained to animals. We're saying that they're trying to gather information that will lead to some conclusions that whether or not this food is hazardous to our health, whether or not it is profitable, whether it's even an equivalent to what we're leaving, which would be the reproduction cycle of the seed that God had initiated back in the Garden of Eden in Genesis 3:16, 17, and 18, where we see, men having to go to the ground and eat the food that's inside the ground. This food is the food that was spoken of by God in his design. We're getting close to an area where we're almost ready to close off our session here, and we'll be picking up again